Just ahead, there's another edition of the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's talk and entertainment networks and in the Orlando area on Tough TV 38. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm political analyst Al Spry. It's great to be here, Reagan. We have a full show. We're talking about movies with Henry Maldanado of the Florida Film Festival and John Lux with Ideas.
Yeah, two very separate and different kind of ideas, but things that we think you're going to find important to this particular industry in Florida. So if you'll stay put, the Florida Roundtable begins following these messages. This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's talk and entertainment networks, and in the Orlando area on Tough TV 38. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
Political analyst Al Spry. Reagan, it's good to see you.
Always a pleasure to be with you too, Al, and another week gone by. The days are flying here.
They are. We also want to thank Tough TV, our friends Will and Sue over there putting us on Tough TV 38. If you don't get it, you can get it over the air. And we are on 3 times a week, Wednesdays, Saturdays, Sundays at 9 a.m. And you should call your cable or satellite operator, tell them to put some Tough TV on there, and then you'll really be rocking.
There you go.
Ted Cruz announced, it was nice enough to do this before the taping of Florida Roundtable. Thanks, Ted, for thinking of us.
You think that'll help?
I don't know. Maybe we'll get some swag. He is Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. He went to Lynchburg, Virginia, and spoke at a Christian university. He asked his Christian conservative constituency and the voters to imagine a United States without the IRS, without Obamacare, and without abortion rights, and to imagine they can make that happen by supporting him. He's about as right as you can get, pretty much.
Liberty University, isn't it? That's the one that was created by the late Jerry Falwell.
It was. It was Falwell's brainchild, and it is Liberty University. He made this appeal on Monday. He is trying to go for the most conservative voters in the United States.
Yeah, Tea Party favorite, the far right. And it probably will stand him fairly well, although if I was a betting man, I would not, at this point, and we're a long ways away yet, but I would not look at him walking away with a Republican nomination.
No, I can say that he will definitely not get the Republican nomination, and here's why. And we talked about this game a little bit with Ron Paul, who ran as a conservative candidate, libertarian. They want a mainstream, moderate-sounding to appeal to the most Americans and get some of the Democrats to vote. And so a guy who's all the way on one end of the spectrum, yes, he's going to appeal to his base, but is he really going to appeal to a majority of Americans to get a majority of votes? I'm not thinking so.
Probably not.
But here's a quote. I'll just give you a quote from Ted. He says, "I believe in you. I believe in the power of millions of courageous conservatives rising up to reignite the promise of America." It's always very general, these kind of things. Quote, "And that is why today I'm announcing I'm running for president of the United States of America." So normally, the first person who announces doesn't normally, I think it's only happened twice in history if they've gotten the nomination and then they haven't won. Yeah. So I guess he just wanted to get it out there. He's 44 years old. And I wanted to throw that out there at you.
Yeah, very active, and he'll be a player. He's going to be a factor in this thing. And the other Republican candidates who are considering yet and not formally announced are going to have to take this into consideration when they campaign against him.
And of course, look forward to finding some type of dirt being dug up on Ted Cruz, because that always happens.
Absolutely,
something from Ted's past will scuttle his candidacy. Not this year. I don't know if it'll happen. Well, it might. It might happen later in 2015. But something's going to happen because politics is dirty.
Yeah, it is.
And if you're not the quote-unquote anointed candidate, well, you're in for a rough ride.
Allow me 30 seconds here or so to a little personal irritation that I want to aim at our friends in television news. A couple of weeks back, I was in South Carolina and in North Carolina. And on that Thursday and Friday, Jeb Bush was in the neighborhood. I didn't see a whole lot of local TV news, but I did see on Friday night, and here's Jeb Bush making a couple of points, and they're saying, oh, he's kissing babies, and blah, blah, blah. I come back to the Orlando area, and the following Tuesday night, on an Orlando news program at 11 o'clock, they had the same video touting it as today Jeb Bush was in South Carolina. It was 4 days earlier. They lied to us. I see this on a couple of the
Where
Orlando,
did you see that on
the
some of
NBC affiliate in Orlando. It was touted as being today when it was the same video that I saw in South Carolina 4 days sooner.
Amazing.
This is put me down as neutral on that one. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
We'll be joined by Henry Maldanado as our conversation continues. We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's talk and entertainment networks, and in the Orlando area on Tough TV 38. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
And Al, I enjoyed our conversation with Henry Maldanado and with John Lux. Sort of related there. Lots of film industry jobs in Florida that they're trying to hold on to, and digital media and things like that. And, of course, Henry with the Florida Film Festival. So.
I'm a film fan, and I do think that incentives can work as long as they're done in a responsible manner. And if it's not going to come to our state, it'll go to other states.
Well, that's right.
So everyone should keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Turning the page.
Yes.
I'm very concerned about the rise in anti-Semitism here, but more in Europe. Europe had a hand, of course, in killing 6 million Jewish people and 5 million other people as well. But I want to focus on the anti-Semitic aspect for a moment. We just saw just a few days ago an attack in London on a synagogue by 20 or so young men. These this was unbelievable to me because, I think that after paying in lives, as the Jewish people have, and after paying throughout history, it seems like it's still cool to hate Jewish people, and I don't understand where this is coming from, except it must come from the parents of these young men who were not around during World War II or the Holocaust. What are your thoughts, Reagan?
I think you're exactly right, and or religious radical training that comes from that particular group. We thought that having the films, General Eisenhower was very insistent that very graphic and explicit films be made in the concentration camps as Germany lost World War II, so that people would not forget. And yet, even here in Florida, in recent years, we've had people who come out and say, "Oh, that's all phony. It was made up." Well, it wasn't fake, friends. It really happened. Millions were killed, and as you go back across the centuries, it's always been a target, and you can't even put a number on the number of people who have been killed. And along come these fal-de-ral folks who say, "Oh, it never happened."
Well, my thought is that Jewish people have been very successful. I believe that there's a lot of training and so forth to be successful, and Jewish people are smart. Non-Jewish people are smart too. But what I'm saying is, as a group, I guess they're easy to pick on and always have been. But I never thought I would see the amount of anti-Semitism return after World War II, which tells me that there isn't much hope for the human race. Because if we can't learn from something as horrific as World War II and the gassing of people and then burning of bodies on the scale of millions, then really, if it just takes 70 years to erase all of that from the collective imagination and memory, then where do we stand as a people? What do we stand as a race? I really don't hold that much hope for success.
You are condemned to make the same mistakes over and over and over again.
Right.
Something has fallen through the cracks in the educational system worldwide that allows this to happen.
I think ultimately people's prejudices against other people and the need to feel superior is always going to trump history because history is something that if you don't focus on, you could just pretend never happened, like you were alluding to. And the danger there of course, is more World War IIs, more gassing, more burning of bodies, more burning of books as we're seeing recently, nuclear war. I wouldn't put any of these off the table because I don't think we've evolved enough to not have all of that happen again.
Yeah, and on the low side, you mentioned World War II, and we are in that 70th anniversary period. The low side would indicate 62 million people were killed during this war, and a big chunk of that centering on anti-Semitism.
How many do you think will be killed in the next war, Reagan?
With the bombs
Probably
we
a lot
have now,
more.
well, sure. The population's bigger, and we got better weapons.
And, this comes down from parents teaching their children. And ultimately, it's a parent's responsibility not to spread these hateful ideas against race and religion. But I don't know, Reagan. I'm not seeing much of a change. So, like I said, I don't hold out much hope for the success of the human race. But maybe someone can change my mind.
Well, it does make it awfully hard to be optimistic. That is for certain. Young people out there who will listen to you can be reached.
Yes, and one thing, these are drunk males believed to have walked to the area from a house party nearby. So this wasn't even a really political. This is like, let's just beat up Jewish people.
Yeah.
We're drunk, so let's just kill Jewish people.
Yeah.
So so there's no rhyme or reason to it whatsoever.
No, there really isn't.
And I won't be visiting England anytime soon.
I'm with you on that one. That is for sure. Well, it is time for us to take another pause along our network line here. We'll remind you that this is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks in the Orlando area on TV 38. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
We'll have a closing thought following these messages. We're back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And don't let me forget, in the Orlando area, also of Tough TV 38. Well, Al, as promised, we are joined in studio today by our dear friend Henry Maldanado from the Florida Film Festival. Henry, good to see you again, sir.
It's great to see you. I only see you once a year, but it is a joy.
Seems like it was just yesterday
It does. And maybe it wasn't. I don't remember.
And it's probably good you don't see us too often. You don't want to burn out on me and Reagan. So, you got to keep the relationship fresh, man. It's very important. So.
Before we get started into the film festival, take just 30 seconds for those along the network line who may not know, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how it was you became involved in the film festival.
Sure. I'm Henry Maldanado. I'm the president of NZN and the Florida Film Festival. Prior to that, I spent 40 years in broadcasting. And here in Orlando, I was the general manager of Channel 6. I'm the one who did the editorials at the end, and you either loved me or you hated me. I retired, and somebody said, "You want to be president of the NZN?" And I said, "Sure." They got a great bar, free movies. How can I go wrong?
What do you like best about what you do with NZN?
I really love movies, and NZN is a perfect place to watch movies. But that love of movies is like so strong. I feel when the lights go down, like somebody's wrapping a warm blanket around me, and I'm just going to be like in heaven for the next 2 hours.
Well, it's a great way to escape reality for certain. I think that's why people still go to the movies after all these years.
It's really probably the most effective way to forget your troubles. They were very popular during the past depression, the depression in the 30s. Movies always work to just kind of take you away and put you someplace you've never been.
Success was always round the next corner, and there was that glamour of romance and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And boy, it was a great escape.
Absolutely.
And it still can work that way.
It can. If just some of the movie stars weren't acting like such idiots some of the times, I think it would be a very respectable profession.
Well, back in the day, the Hollywood studios controlled the actors' behavior pretty much to a T. And if they made a mistake, there was like a cover-up, and that's well known. But today, it's like all the actors seem to be independent contractors, obviously, and they're just trying to keep in the press, and they're always doing silly things. I think it's just by design.
And what's really amazing now of the new days, even if things are bad, they get good press. Just look at any of the magazine shows on TV. They're always doing terrible things, and it just makes them more famous.
Well, all right. How about Florida Film Festival? Now, let's sketch out the dates and whatnot, and then we'll get into some of the things, the special things you're doing this year.
April 10th through the 19th at Enzian, which is on 1792. Look it up, and it's got a number. I don't know what it is. But it's our 24th year.
Okay.
The theater itself just celebrated 30 years. This is the 24th year of the festival, and it is considered one of the top festivals in the country, not because it's big and not because it's powerful, but because it's so nice and it maintains that nice smallness that the filmmakers love. So our theater is full of, we're going to have 100 filmmakers roaming around. They love to come, not only because of the Enzian, or Florida. They've had a rough winter with it.
Oh, yes, they have.
What actors are going to be around this year?
Well, we're going to have 100 filmmakers, and I can't tell you the names, but the actors who are scheduled to come, one of them is Sam Rockwell. Sam Rockwell is very famous. He's a real up-and-coming actor. He's going to be the great actor of his generation, and we're going to sit with him and watch a movie called Moon. I don't know if you saw that movie, but it's not that old. It's about 7 years old. And it's about an astronaut who's on the moon. He's all by himself, and things start to happen. It's been highly acclaimed. He's going to be there. We're going to talk to him afterwards. It's going to be a great time. And the other one is a guy named Bob Balaban that a lot of you may not recognize the name, but he's been in everything from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He was Francois Truffaut's interpreter, to, and this is how you will recognize him, if you watch Seinfeld, he was the guy who played the network executive who fell in love with Elaine and joins Greenpeace at the end. Everybody.
Oh,
knows who
yeah,
that
of
is.
course.
Okay,
But
yeah,
in between, he has done and he has worked with practically everybody. And with him, we're going to watch a movie called Gosford Park, which is a Robert Altman movie, which was written by the guy who writes, what is it? I don't remember the name, but he's a great writer, and it feels like a masterpiece theater, and it's a mystery.
Okay. Now, the locations and whatnot, you've got all of these great films in a very short period of time. And we do want to stress that this festival is one that if you happen to be listening to this in Miami or over in Pensacola, you might want to take a long weekend or come down for a couple of days and get involved in this thing if you really are, a film person. This is absolutely worth your while because you get to sit and talk to the creative people. It's more than just come in and look at a movie.
Absolutely. And the intimacy of Enzian, if you've never been there, really allows you to talk to the filmmakers. It isn't like the filmmakers are private parties. They're roaming around outside, and you get a chance to meet with them. They'll talk. They feel very comfortable there. And half the time, you can go there, most of the time, without even knowing what movie you're going to see.
So the most interesting thing that sets you apart from other festivals, as you were alluding to, is the intimacy. Then.
Absolutely. I mean, Sundance is great. Toronto is great. But A, you have to be an A-list person to get invited to the right parties. B, it happens all over the city, so you're not in any one location. At Enzian, you're basically at a lovely place, lovely gardens, and everybody's sitting there just dying to talk to you.
What are the other movie theaters involved that people can see these films at this year?
Well, because we're running 170 movies, we can't run them all at Enzian. So the Regal, just down the street from us, picks up the slack, and between the two of us, we manage to show every movie at least twice. So you're always going to get a chance to see what you want to see.
Now, we need to do this a couple of times. We'll do it now and again before we part company. But for folks listening around the state, where do they go to find more information or ticket reservations, things like that?
We've all now gotten used to FloridaFilmFestival.com.
Okay.
It tells you everything. It has all the movies there, more than I can remember. How to get tickets. We have packages of all sorts. Individual tickets are $9.11, and you can go all the way up to passes, you can have my oldest son for the week.
What makes this one different from the past years? Do you have more movies? Are there more variety? Are you giving out more? What's new and improved in this year's Florida Film Festival?
Well, outside of we have some extra parties, because the thing to remember about a film festival, we're not just watching films, we're celebrating films. So we have a filmmakers party, we have a party when a star comes to town, but the difference really is not in what we do, is what the movies do. And we have movies that have been seen before. In Florida alone, 150 movies are being seen in Florida for the first time.
Wow.
21 are world premieres, have never been seen by anybody. So that really is the difference of a film festival. It's like going to a museum. It's what's on the walls really that makes this one different from last year.
So you have a total of more than 176 feature and short films. So what is it? That must be the most ever, then, right?
It is. Yeah. It's quite a task because we got 1,600 entries.
Wow.
And out of those, somebody had to watch every single one of them, more than one person, and then whittle it down to 176.
Holy cow! That's a lot of entries.
That's quite the job.
It sounds to me like the process for next year's festival has probably already started.
You know, our people are a bit of slackers. They take 2 weeks off and then they start up again.
So only about 10% of the movies that are sent in actually make the festival.
That's right.
That's pretty stringent.
It's a very, very tough film festival to get into. So the ones that get in, I can assure you, all of them are terrific movies.
Tell us about the opening night film. This is Welcome to Me. This is was made in 2014. It's rated R. And Kristen Wiig, James Marsden. This is a very interesting plot line. I don't think I've ever seen a plot line like this.
Well, the opening night film is always fun. It's sort of who's going to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and it takes us all the way until the end. We just announced it. It's Welcome to Me, starring Kristen Wiig from Saturday Night Live. And the storyline is pretty much makes it interesting. This is about a woman who is a bit of a shut-in, has a bit of a personality disorder, wins the lottery, $86 million. And what does she do with her money? What would you do? Well, she buys a national talk show. And she is the host of the show and the guest of the show.
And she quits her psychiatric meds, too.
Absolutely.
And that just leads to all kinds of plot twists.
Now, just to reassure you, this is not going to be a heavy-duty film. This is a dark comedy, and it's supposed to be terrific. And actually, it was the movie that opened the Toronto Film Festival just a little while ago.
Hey, Ray, probably not a fair question, but one I'm going to ask you anyways. Over this process, you took a couple of weeks off last year. You started working on the films. Do you have a personal favorite that's coming up in this festival?
I don't have a personal favorite yet because I haven't seen them. I'm like
okay,
you.
You're the one.
Okay, so I'm really looking at The Promise.
Yeah,
And The Promise is just terrific. We have great documentaries. We have a documentary which is about the history of the Harvard Lampoon and the which became the National Lampoon Company, and they made all those crazy movies from Animal House on. It's supposed to be a terrific movie. We also have another movie called Sunshine Superman, which is about a base jumper.
Really?
Okay, a base jumper is a guy who jumps off of buildings with his parachute. It's supposed to be terrific.
Wow.
So we have a lot of films, and in many ways, and a lot of you may or may not know, you have to be a film shark to like this. But we also have a special film at the end, which has a new print, and we make a big deal out of it. And it's Jean-Luc Godard's Alphaville, which is a classic film.
It's a classic film, yeah.
It is. It's a classic film. But all throughout, and what I always tell people, every film is good because you had to be to get into the festival.
Yeah, so you won't be disappointed, especially if you like films that are well crafted and. I don't think we're getting enough of those out of Hollywood mainstream as we used to. It seems like everything seems to be a superhero movie or some kind of a rehash or a rehash of a rehash. And
that's true. But the interesting thing is take a look at the two movies that were vying for the top honors at the Oscars. They were movies that were independent film.
Yep.
And they were movies that played Enzian first before they played anywhere else.
And what were those?
Help me.
That was Selma.
It was the Birdman.
Birdman.
And it was Boyhood.
And Boyhood.
Okay, and both of those played Enzian. The year before, 12 Years a Slave, independent movie. Where did it play first?
Enzian.
So what you're saying is very true, but the independent films that become famous are becoming more and more prevalent, and they're influencing everybody else.
By the way, Birdman was quite a movie.
It was terrific. It was terrific.
It was great.
Yeah.
Well, let us recap here a little bit. The Florida Film Festival, the 2015 edition, takes place based at the Enzian Theater in suburban Orlando, April 10th through April 19th inclusive. And if you need more information and ticket reservations and things like that, you need to go to floridafilmfestival.com. You'll find all that we have been talking about here. It is just a marvelous, marvelous time in a beautiful, relaxed setting. You'll get to meet so many of the important folks in this. And Henry, again, thank you for coming up and sharing with us this.
Thank you very much for having us. And please, come to the festival. I'll see you there. I'll buy you a drink, maybe.
That works for me. I think Al and I are there, that's for sure. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks, and we'll continue following these messages. From Pensacola to Key West and all points in between, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks, and in the Orlando area on Tough TV 38. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
And we do thank you for the pleasure of your company. Al, in studio, we have with us now John Lux. He is the head of IDS, and John is headquartered here in Orlando. For starters, just a few minutes ago we were talking with Henry Maldanado about the Florida Film Festival, which is kind of related to what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes. But tell us about yourself and about your company, and then we'll get into this issue.
Okay. First of all, thanks for having me. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Ideas here in Orlando. We are a media and experience design company. We primarily work in 4 industries, being healthcare, government, corporate, and the entertainment industry.
That's pretty varied.
It is varied, and that's on purpose. Depending on where the economy is in each of those industries, determines sometimes where we're stronger in a given year or even a given quarter. Primarily, we do concept development, experience design, branding, training, media production, and mobile applications. And we do it across all 4 of those industries.
You're more marketing guys, basically. You come up with new ways of marketing?
We do. A lot of times we do marketing, and a lot of it is internal marketing, kind of marketing what an organization is or a company to its employees to make sure that they're living their brand in order to be able to do that externally. If you can't do it internally, it's really difficult to be able to have a good brand externally. So we do that a lot with different companies. And I am also on the executive board for Film Florida. And we are an entertainment production association, and to the best of my knowledge, we're the only statewide association that represents film, television, and digital media. So that's where the combination of Film Florida and Ideas comes into play, is through the entertainment industry.
Well, it's very interesting having you on now. The legislature is meeting. Of course, there's a lot of comedy going on in Tallahassee and a lot of interesting things. But what brings you today, I think, has to do with the fact you were saying here that in the last 5 years, the first 3 were tax rebate program was in effect for films, TV, digital media, and the following 2 years have had no new tax credits. What's the importance of this? Of course, you have some on the other side saying these are handouts, but then, of course, on your end, I would think it would be a stimulative, but why don't you let us know what's going on with this?
Yeah, back in 2010, and then it was extended in 2011. So essentially, in 2010, for 6 years, there was going to be $296 million in tax credits allocated. And the program was so popular that it used the $296 million in 3 years instead of 6 years, essentially. That $296 million in tax credits led to $1.5 billion in direct spending in Florida. So in essence, in those first 3 years, we worked on about 20 projects in the entertainment industry. The last 2 years, since the tax credits have been unavailable, we've worked on just 3 projects in the entertainment industry because less projects are doing work in the state and coming to the state. And the thing about the program as it was and is hopefully going to be reallocated this year with some changes is that it truly is the definition of a performance-based program. In that, number one, it's tax credits or tax rebates. There's no actual cash coming from the state that goes to these projects. The second important point is that it only gives those rebates for Florida expenditures. So if a project comes from out of state and brings their entire crew from out of state, we're happy to have them. We welcome them with open arms, but they don't get a penny of the tax rebates. They only get it if they spend it on Florida companies and Florida residents. And then the third point, which is probably the most important one for taxpayers, is that none of these tax rebates are given out until projects are completed and audited by two separate entities to ensure that Florida tax rebates are only going for Florida expenditures. So it's not, it truly is the definition of performance-based, and it's fiscally conservative, it's very responsible, and it's very Florida-centric.
Mm-hmm. Now, in order to get this restored, we've got to get things through the legislature, and you are working on that even as we speak.
Correct. In the House, the bill sponsor is Representative Mike Miller from Winter Park. And in the Senate, the bill sponsor is Senator Nancy Dietert from Sarasota. Each of them have been unbelievable in terms of their willingness to work with the industry as well as work with the legislature, as well as their effort just overall in trying to make this work. And you know, there's no such thing as a perfect bill. You know, what the industry wants 100%, frankly, probably would never get the light of day in Tallahassee. And what the legislators would want 100% probably would not work for the industry. You know, it's that constant game of what can you live with, what can the industry live with, what's good for the industry, what has to be good for the state of Florida. And there's a lot of back and forth. And you know, we're making our way through the committees, and we're cautiously optimistic. But in the end, you know, it's a matter of prioritization, and what we're working at as an industry is not necessarily to gain support, because support isn't necessarily the problem with the legislators. It's getting support in strong enough fashion that it's a priority to get it done, and not just, well, yeah, if it happens, great. No, we need legislators to say, no, this needs to happen, and we need to get this done.
Well, why are you getting backlash from groups like Americans for Prosperity, who are actually spending money against renewing these incentives? Why is that? Why are you seeing that? Because I never really saw that before. It used to be a fairly non-political issue.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to speak for them.
What do you think?
Well, I think that my honest opinion is I'm not sure they truly understand how Florida-centric this program is. You know, they use buzz terms and flashy headlines, and you know, the truth of the matter is this is a program about the 100,000 people in the state of Florida that work in the industry. There's 16,000 companies that work in film, television, and digital media. This is not about Hollywood. This is about Floridians, and this is about the Florida economy and having a diverse economy. Our industry, a recent survey from Visit Florida showed that 22.7% of domestic tourists to the state of Florida indicated that something they saw on film or television influenced their decision to come here. So they see a great fishing show on TV, or they see something from, Miami Vice or Burn Notice or any of those type of shows, or Dolphin Tale is the best example. And they come here. They come to spend money. So this is about diversifying the economy in Florida. And our industry is an iconic industry in Florida. It's been around for many, many, many decades, long before any of us were here. And this is about just retaining and sustaining that industry. And again, it's about as Florida-centric as a program can possibly be to ensure that the tax credits from Florida go for Florida expenditures.
Yeah, and I want you to repeat that. The numbers were impressive for the years that this was in existence. It sounded to me almost like a 5-to-1 ratio of dollars generated for the amount of tax credits that went out.
Yeah, from 2010 until now, and again, some of those tax credits are still being used. So the estimate that is coming in is when the $296 million of tax rebates that were available are going to be completely exhausted, that's going to lead to $1.5 billion in Florida expenditures. That in most cases would not be here otherwise.
Briefly, what do you say to people that say that these companies should be financing their own films, that they don't need incentives? And it's the same argument about sports stadiums. Why do the tax incentives have to fund this stuff?
Well, we're competing with close to 40 other states, not to mention other countries that have similar programs. Ours is about as conservative fiscally and as Florida-centric, state-centric as any of those programs. Programs that are looked at as kind of the model of how to get this work to a location, they're actually changing some of their language to be more like Florida's, because they're seeing, in order to be in this long term, you need to make sure that you're benefiting your state the most. And that's what our program does, and that's what we continue to emphasize, is the direct impact within Florida.
John, we have just a minute left here. What should our listeners do? They're buying into what you're saying. What do you advise them? How can they help you?
The easiest way to do it, if you go on Facebook or Twitter, follow Film Florida. The logo is black and orange and blue, and has a little play button in it. If you follow those things on Facebook and Twitter, that's where the calls to action are going to be. There are different times in the legislative session that are more important for contacting legislators within committees and committee chairs. And that's where we're getting our information out to make sure people know what to do and when to do it.
All right. John Lux from IDS, we hope you will come back and give us an update on how things turn out here. And if you are, as John said, Facebook and Twitter, you can find out more information. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
And we'll continue our conversation in a moment. This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks, and in the Orlando area on Tough TV 38. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry, Reagan.
And Al, I'm as serious as some of this has been. I am enjoying this conversation with you, as I always do. And we are fortunate in that a lot of the folks along our network line seem to appreciate what we have to say. And many of you do let us know that, too. So,
yes, thank you. You can always email us. Of course, I am Al Spry at iHeartMedia.com. Reagan is Reagan Smith at iHeartMedia.com. We always like to hear from you. You can always send us snail mail as well, the address after this broadcast. Let's talk pot. Let's lighten things up.
Sure.
Non-euphoric pot may nudge forward in the legislature this year, but the window for a full-fledged medical marijuana system has all but slammed shut. So the only way we're going to get medical marijuana in this state is through another amendment. So if you're for medical marijuana, as I am, and I believe you are, Reagan, because it does help people with some very serious and debilitating illnesses be able to eat and suffering less nausea, and there are other benefits as well, we believe. So that is the only way that it'll happen, and that'll be in 2016. Hopefully we'll have another amendment that will pass. The last one came close. A bill by Senator Jeff Brandes of St. Petersburg that would allow broad use of medical marijuana has not been scheduled for a committee hearing. They're just clamping down on it. Because, as you know, everything's run by the GOP, and the GOP doesn't like marijuana.
No.
I don't know. They just like good old-fashioned alcohol, and not that I have anything against good old-fashioned alcohol, but I really do think that medical marijuana can do things that alcohol can't.
Well, yeah, I'm with you. We'll do that. I was looking around here, Al, and I noticed, we don't know what Marco Rubio is going to do just yet. He says if he announces for president that he will give up his Senate seat.
Yes.
He doesn't necessarily have to do that, but he says he will. Already, Democrats have been scrambling, trying to put somebody in there. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who probably would be their strongest candidate and the best-known Democrat in the state at this point, outside of Bill Nelson, says she's not going to do it.
Because she knows she'll lose.
She's going to stay in the House of
Yeah,
Representatives.
she's not going to win. She wouldn't win.
Patrick Murphy, a young Democrat, Representative Patrick Murphy, says he is running. And we'll now have a 5-second pause while people say, Patrick who? And he is the representative who unseated Allen West down in southeast Florida.
Yeah, but here's one thing that people have to understand. In this state, which is, it has Democrats and Republicans, but we have a Democrat in the Senate, Bill Nelson. They're not going to elect another Democratic senator. I don't see that happening. Not with the way things are being controlled in the legislature and the way that the state is laid out. But But I will say this. Marco Rubio doesn't have to give up his seat. I think it's a bad idea if he runs for president and gives up his seat.
Well,
because if he loses, he's out completely.
Yeah.
I don't know. And he doesn't have to.
Right.
Remember when, what was his name?
Lyndon Johnson ran for vice president and for another term as senator from the state of Texas.
Right.
While he was running with John Kennedy.
And then there was also the gentleman that ran with Al Gore.
That's right. Yeah.
And he kept his Senate seat.
Yeah.
And he continued to serve. So, there's I think there's other things.
That the same thing could be done in Florida. Well, we'll let some time go by and we'll see what happens. In the meantime, thank you for your time this day. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
And we'll see you again in 1 week with another edition of the Florida Roundtable.
You've been listening to Florida Roundtable, a weekly look at issues and problems of concern to Floridians from a state, national, and international perspective. Presented by the Florida News Network with your hosts, Reagan Smith and Al Spry. The views and opinions expressed during the preceding program are solely those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station's ownership, management, or sponsors of FNN. Your views and opinions are welcome. Address your card or letter to Florida Roundtable in care of Reagan Smith, 2500 Maitland Center Parkway, Suite 407, Maitland, Florida, 32751. Or you may email reagansmith@fnnonline.com. Thank you for listening, and please join us again next week for another edition of Florida Roundtable.